Well, you gotta be kidding me. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Kennebec Life and Craft. I am coming to you from the middle of the woods, a large swath of land here in our town, and it is not my land, but it is the land of some neighbors and some friends, and they have allowed us to come out to their property and take all of these trees that have fallen. They had some forestry work done not long ago that loosened up a bunch of trees with wind and everything else, and has made it so there's a bunch of trees that have fallen right here on this part of the property. And so that's what we're doing today. I'm going to be dragging out a couple of logs in order to continue our timber frame project. And so where does a timber frame begin? It might look a little different in terms of where you begin with a timber frame. You might have logs delivered to your house because you have a sawmill and you don't have access to logs in the woods. You might have a bunch of cants that are delivered to you, a bunch of 8x8s and 6x6s and everything else that you need to cut. So where a timber frame starts really depends on your situation. But for me, it starts right here in the woods. Now what you see right here in front of me is a couple of logs that are on the ground, and this is kind of the classic case in the woods right here. And what I do, because of my machine, I don't have a logging winch, so it makes it a little harder, of course. I have to get up close and personal with these logs before I'm able to drag them out. I can't just be off on a road somewhere, a tote road in the woods here, and hook up a logging winch and drag it out. So what I do is I like to put a lot of weight on the front. So what I'm going to do is grab this log right here with my grapple, and then I'm going to turn the machine around, back up, and then grab this larger one right here, and then I'll show you what I do with the backhoe in order to get that attached, and then I'll start dragging that out. All right, so that's how I manage that. As you can see, we have it front loaded up there with a smaller log, and then I put the larger log in the back here, and that will just be dragged out. You know, this tree has been down for a while, but obviously it would be a complete waste to leave it here. I just took the time to count the rings, and this tree is 100 years old, or was 100 years old when it literally keeled over. It's really great to come out here, grab these logs, and hopefully turn them into a building that'll last for 100 more years. Now, some of you in the comments below will have to explain to me the point of that whole regen thing. I confessed in a recent video that I don't know very much about tractors. Really getting into this one, I've done a service on it and some maintenance and various things, but I don't know tons and tons about tractors, engines, and all that. But the whole regen thing doesn't seem to make complete sense to me. To blow off all of that crap into the atmosphere anyways, why not just allow it to happen as the tractor is going day after day, as opposed to storing it all up and blowing it out? Maybe that's not what's happening. Maybe that's what it just seems like it's happening, or what I've heard is happening. But anyway, some of you in the comments below, let me know why that is happening, because it's kind of annoying. It wasn't so bad this time just because I had to take these logs out, and it took me about, I don't know, 15-20 minutes to get out of the woods anyways. So not that big of a deal when it happens with perfect timing. But there's other times where it's terrible timing. You just kind of have to wait and let it happen. Now, I haven't been out to the mill in quite some time, really, at least to do anything serious. And so what I'm doing now is just kind of seeing where I left off. I never marked all of the things that I need, the pieces that I need, the lengths that I need, things like that. I need several 12-foot tie beams. All of these are about 9x9s. But this will be a tie beam here. It's a 13-footer, so we can easily cut down that. The one below it is the same size, and so that'll be another tie beam. And then I'm gonna need, I believe it's 6 posts. Makes sense because there's 3 bents, so there'll be 6 posts that I need that I'll make up with the rest of this material right here, as well as what I dragged out of the woods just now. All of these pieces behind me, these posts and tie beams and whatnot, they're all about 9x9, 9x8, something like that. And the reason I did that is I milled them larger than I knew they had to be. 6 of them need to be something like 7x7, and then I think the other ones need to be 8x7s. But the reason that I did that was so that they would get milled, they would be oversized, but they'd be outside in the weather, drying for a few weeks or a couple months or something like that. They'd probably twist a little bit or do something funky, then get them back on the mill and perfectly square them out. Well, you gotta be kidding me. I nudged this log. I was gonna move this log and it ended up budging my mill off of its blocks, and admittedly they weren't on there that securely anyway. This is not the best setup, but this is what I can do for now, and so it has fallen off, and this is going to add a bunch more time to the day. I wasn't anticipating being out here too much longer, but this is going to be a little bit of a process. What I'm going to have to do is get this sawmill head, bring it to the other end of the mill, kind of counterbalance, put a little bit of weight on that side, and then just see what we can do from there. I might have to chain it to the backhoe, lift it up, and all of that. And friends, you know, if that happens, it just proves as another example. You've seen what I've done with the backhoe already this morning with dragging out logs or flipping over that stump or whatever else. And just another example where the backhoe comes in a pinch. But we might have to get there. We might have to do that. We'll see what happens. I did say, I think it was in the last video from last weekend, that I was going to try to show a little bit more of the trouble spots of the day, and this is certainly one of them. Well, that was a little bit less dramatic than I originally thought. I thought it was going to be a lot more work than that, but I ended up just being able to balance out the sawmill with the saw head and then throw the feet underneath, dig them out a little bit. There's so much crud that gets around these pads that you kind of have to dig them out a little bit after a while, but no big deal. We'll be up and running in just a second. I got to run home and get a level, and so I'll be back with you right after that. That's what I'm talking about. All right, we're good and level, so now we're good to go. I'm going to throw this log back on the mill, and then I want to show you exactly how I mill out my timber frame beams, posts, whatever they happen to be, how I work out from the center, hopefully in order to get the most yield from the log that I possibly can. So it's vital in timber framing to cut around the heart of the log, and this is what I mean. You can see right here, this is what we call the center. This is the juvenile core of the tree right there, and it's absolutely the weakest part of the tree. You would never want to woodwork with the wood from the pith, and you don't want to timber frame with the wood around the pith. If the heart of the tree is on the edge of your post or your beam, it's going to crack more than normal. It's going to crack no matter what, but it's going to crack more than normal, and it's going to be a bit weaker because of that. And so what you want to do is you really want to box around the heart of the tree. Now, to give you a little bit of a visual, I know that I want this to end up being a 9x9. And so half of 9, of course, is 4.5. And so you put about 4.5 there. So I know I want to be here. I know I want to be here. And then you do it again. No, I want to be here. Come up to 9. No, I want to be there. So I know minimally I've got my 4 sides right here, and I can mark those out with my straight edge. And of course this won't be perfect, but you'll get an idea. So now you at least have an idea of what I think that I'm going to get. I wanted to box out this because I want to get a 9x9. But then I've got this extra wood on the outsides that I can take whatever I can, whatever the log ends up giving me. But that at least gives me the exact yield that I want out of it for a post, for a beam, or whatever, but then also be able to get a little bit of wood on the sides here, these flitches and these slabs. Now, another thing that we need to make sure of is where exactly is our pith relative to the other side of the log. You can see here, if I take a straight edge and put it across my mill, that you can easily measure exactly where your pith is. And this is about just exactly 12 inches. And so I can come to the other side of the mill over here, lay it down again in the same way, and measure and see where the pith is on this side, and it's saying 11 inches. Now, on purpose, this is my smaller end because my toe board is at the end of the side of the mill. And so because of that, I can lift up this side of the log in order to match that side of the log. It's about 11.5 inches from the rails on either side of this log, so that when you take your passes with the mill, it goes precisely through the log and makes it so that you have the heart in the center on both sides of your log. Some of you might be thinking that that's a lot of work in order to get something out of a log. Why not just throw the log on there and go to town and the rest? To give you a little background, a little story, I've worked with some wood in the past that was not milled appropriately. It was a beautiful wood. It would have been premium had it been milled properly. And what ended up happening is every single board that I had gotten from this individual ended up having some pith in it, because instead of the log being perfectly horizontal, it ended up being on a diagonal essentially when it was on the mill. And so that when the mill was passing through it, it was putting the pith in every single board basically that ended up coming out of those logs. So it ended up making those boards way less valuable, way less premium than they otherwise should have been. And so this is why you go through the trouble. You do it right, you mill it right, and it's going to serve you for a long time and be a pleasure to work with. All right, so we'll call that good enough for now. I'm going to lock this log in place and we'll start taking our first pass. So what I like to do is I like to make sure that my blade is going to go to my mark. And then I just give myself an even 1 here, because I'm going to make 1-inch boards off of the leftovers that I have from this. And so I set it there, and then I know I can just go up for one, another one, or go down, whatever I specifically need in that moment. And so that's what we're going to do here. We'll go here, then we'll come up another one, and then probably another one, take our slab off, and then start coming back down to our original position, which is right here. Well, friends, we got exactly what we were looking for with boxing out the center of this tree. I'll show you this right here. You can see here that we have the center of the tree, the pith, and then you have your 4.5 inches here, 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 here. And so we've boxed that out pretty well. Well, friends, that is going to do it for me today. I've got the piece that I need and I can continue on. Now in the future, what I want to do is I want to show you how we can do some of the joinery for the timber frame right here on the mill. And so we will do that with this beam, and we'll do it with some of the other ones as well in the future. I really do want to emphasize the community aspect of this for me. I don't do videos like this because I think I know everything there is to know about sawmilling or about land development or anything, but just trying to show how I'm doing the best I can with what I have and trying to put out a good product for some of the buildings and whatnot that we're trying to build on our own property. And so I would love to know if you have some ideas, if you have some corrections, some different things that I can be doing better. I would absolutely love to know what those are. So please engage in the comments. Let me know. Whether we're talking about the chainsaw, the tractor, the sawmill, it doesn't matter to me. I'm very interested to know how I can get a bit more efficient, how I can take care of my equipment better, and how I can get a better product as a result of all of this work. And so, hey, until next time, God bless you, and we'll see you then.